We're jumping into Battletech tabletop tactics here. We've got a number of new players, a number of new subscribers to the channel, checking out, discussing, getting ready for this massive drop of amazing miniatures. Whether you're going to be playing the Inner Sphere or the clans, let's put that baseline and look to understand the DNA of Battletech. Going beyond the mechs, we all have our favorite machines, going beyond combined arms and the missions, all important points to understand. But at its core, Battletech is a game of modifiers. And the two modifiers that work against each other, depending on your perspective, are you an attacker or a defender? If you're an attacker, you're trying to bring those modifiers down. You're trying to make things easier to hit on the 2d6. And if you're a defender, you're trying to push those modifiers up so the attacker has a much harder, a more difficult time. Before anything else, putting my quest for personal glory aside, this is also pulling in from wargaming tactics. I mean, this is especially true for Battletech, but it applies to other war games. If you can take the shot, take the shot. Always take the shot in Battletech, because anytime you roll the dice, crazy stuff can happen. Will it happen? Can it happen? Probably not, but you never really know. So if you need 12s to hit, yes, you're probably going to miss. But take that shot. Always take the shot. But tactically, we're going to work things. We're going to help to pull things down, and we're going to look at this idea of modifiers. So the first type of modifier that stacks is movement. And for the attacker, the question is, did your mech stand still? No modifier. Did it walk? +1. Did it run? +2. Did it jump? So essentially, the more that you move, and walking and running, of course, you declare the speed and you move up to the number of hexes that you're capable of moving. So this idea of, can you get where you need to go by walking, or do you really have to run moving the hexes? That represents the stability of your mech, because even with the gyros and the targeting systems, you're moving in this massive machine. So it makes sense, the more you jump or the more you run, it's going to be harder to hit. Those are your first modifiers. So ideally, you want to be standing still. No modifiers. That is great if you're able to stand still. The question here, of course, is when it flips in a moment and you're the defender, you have no modifiers protecting you. So standing still, while it's great, you either want to be in cover or be concealed, or based on Tactica, be in a position where your opponent can't shoot you, or you realize, look, I'm going to stand still for a moment and I'm going to be easier to hit, but I'm going to be hitting you with multiple PPCs, multiple autocannons, multiple weapon systems. I'm going to hit every single button, the entire Alpha Strike on my mech, and I'm going to really just try to cream you. You know, maybe all the modifiers are lining up. So that's the first aspect, trying to get that as low as possible. Second aspect is the range, and the range is important in Battletech because there is a short range, there's a medium range, and there's a long range. This, combined with your movement, is going to add modifiers. You can begin to see how suddenly these things are stacking up on the 2d6 scale. There are also minimums. Certain weapons, because they need time to accelerate or they need time to discharge, or there's a safety zone. If it's under a minimum, you have the short range bonus, short range modifier, but now it adds additional pieces to it. An example would be a PPC or a long range missiles. This goes back to, though, occasionally, even with those modifiers for being under the minimums, sometimes you still want to shoot. I mean, think about this. If I'm playing an archer, I've got two 20 packs, and if I didn't move, and we're at short range, and you didn't really move, I'm still going to have modifiers because I'm under the minimums, but it's still going to be a little bit terrifying. So this is a holistic thing where we're taking all aspects into account. So that's going to get me, based on my Mech Warrior skill, that's going to get me a base number to hit. Did I move? Did I walk? Did I run? Did I jump? Did I stand still? What's the range? Are there any minimums? Now we add to this calculation. We're flipping to the defender in a second. Now we add to this calculation, looking at the opposing mech or the opposing target, how many hexes did it move? And facing doesn't count. Cleanly, how many hexes did it move? That's going to give you an additional modifier, +1, +2, +3, plus higher, based on how fast that target moved. And that represents in the game the fact that you're in this massive machine moving. Your opponent, your fellow mech warrior, or if it's a tank or a hover, whatever it's going to be, they're not standing still. They're running and gunning. They're bobbing and weaving. They're moving as fast as they can. Now, this modifier might not be that great. If it's an assault mech and you're running, you're not really going to move many hexes. You might get a +1 or a +2 to your modifier. If it's a locust or a wasp or something fast, a hover, it's going to be off the charts. Those mechs, that's how they protect themselves. They don't have a lot of armor. They protect themselves with speed. So now we look at our base number. We add in the opponent's movement. And now we have what we need to hit. Almost. We take into account cover, concealment, or other in-game modifiers which might add an additional +1 to hit. So you see really fast that ideally at long range, if you're operating at long range, if there's any type of movement, it's going to be very, very hard to hit the target. So what you see in Battletech is this, the pace of the game is such where you're taking long-range shots. Because again, even accounting for heat and other tactica, generally, if you could take a shot, you'll take the shot. Be mindful of your heat. Here's an example, because I think it's worth mentioning. If I'm playing a Marauder, I love Marauders. I love Warhammers. There's too many mechs that I love. Just not enough battle value. But if I take that Marauder and I have a shot with the PPC and the autocannon, I'm not going to fire both PPCs and the autocannon. I'm going to build too much heat. But I will fire the autocannon. I will fire a PPC. If you're far enough away, maybe I'll push the heat a little bit. So this way, as you close, I'll let the heat go down, and then fire both PPCs. So yes, always take the shot, but be mindful of heat. But you're going to find that you're missing a lot. In Battletech new players, they understand like, hey, if you're in range, I'm going to take the shot. But there's this frustration or this expectation that you're going to hit stuff. It's at long range, it is hard to hit. Long range with indirect, it is hard to hit. So here's how you get around that. And this leads into the next part, because you're just looking at the numbers. You're crunching the numbers and saying, like, I'm going to need like 10s, 11s, 12s to hit. That's crazy. But those are going to come down very, very fast. Once you close to medium range, once you close to short range, and your opponent, likewise, they're trying to damage you, so maybe they're not running, they're just walking, or they're standing still. Those numbers come down really fast. And we don't want to be caught by surprise. This is the pacing, this is the tempo of the game, where you're at long range, you're shooting, you're like, nothing's happening, right? That grasshopper is across the field, and it's plinking away with its long-range missile pack. Nothing's happening. You're trying to light it up with the autocannons. Nothing's happening. Need 11s, needs 12s to hit. Then the grasshopper closes fast. And in 2 turns, it's on top of you, and now all of a sudden it's just baking you. It's hitting you with the flashlights. It's hitting you with lasers, and you're like, wait, what happened? Distance closes very, very fast in Battletech. So this is the modifiers back and forth. Switching over to Defender, you're going to try and stack your modifiers up as high as possible. You are going to try, well, of course, you're going to try and stay out of range. But you can't always do that, because if your opponent can't shoot at you, often you can't shoot at your opponent. Sometimes that's good. You want to look to be able to stay at the range that works for you, stay at the longest range for your opponent. You're looking to stack your movement modifiers. You're looking to get your opponent to always have to run with their mech or jump to be in range or stay in facing. So it's this battle, this tactica, this positioning. I want to say almost chess-like. This positioning, this is why the hex map and understanding the hex map is so important. And facing and positioning, it's a skill all in itself. And I'm making a note, we're going to explore that for new players. It's not just always run and gun, although much of the game is that. Being able to bring the modifiers up, being able to bring the modifiers down. And on a side note, I'm not going to expand with this vlog because usually we see a little bit at the higher tech levels, and I know clans are incoming. I'm psyched, I'm pumped. But there are, of course, additional rules and additional modifiers you'll find in both the core book and the Total Warfare. If a mech is in a certain condition, it's harder to hit, depending on the circumstances. If it's prone or elevation or in water, this idea that there's certain tech out there, targeting computers, pulse lasers, that based on the hierarchy of the tech, it's so much better. It cuts down on the modifiers. So beyond these base layers, there are other examples where modifiers will be brought down very, very, very quickly. And understanding how quickly they can come down and understanding how to keep them up so we don't get caught by surprise.